And welcome to OnCon's Online Comic Book Connections. You can hear the excited Jacks in the background. This is our upcoming panel, which is right now. It's how to guest like a pro. And I've got some pro guests on for you guys right now, so we're going to go right to them. Check them out. We're going to go one by one. Of course, I am the indie advocating underground devil, and I'm here to add to panel.
There you go.
Like no one else panel, because I'm also a guest a lot of times. And then we're gonna go over to BKM, and then we'll go to Austin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian K. Morris, publisher, chief writer at Rising Tide Publications. This page. It's a page on Facebook. Please give it a like. And also we're at risingtide.pub, as well as every morning I'm a guest on my own show. Never mind the furthermore. Every morning, yes, every morning, because there's something wrong with me, at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. And every Tuesday night we have a show called Clever Title Pending, where we talk about creativity and the business behind it. So, Austin?
Hi, so I'm Austin Janowski. I'm a professional comic book artist since 1994. I've been lucky enough to work for Marvel, Image, IDW, and a bunch of others for over 26 years, working on other books and then publishing my own books like Zombies Were Human 2 and Stanley the Snowman, which is going to be published by Scout Comics once we get over this pandemic. So Facebook, internet, whatever, just look up Austin Janowski. You can find me there. So happy to be aboard.
All right. And we're, of course, coming to you live from the OnCon Network. I'm going to go ahead and start one of those cool watch parties on Facebook for everyone to join us. In the meantime, Can you guys just go over from your past experiences what was when another guest was on a show with you? So we've all been on a show with another guest. What are things that other guest did that just irritated you, and you had to sit there with the clown smile on and pretend you weren't being aggravated by the person across from you, and you had to be professional? What were those things that made them bad guests?
Go for it, Austin. I may take up the rest of the hour with my list.
Well, they weren't listening to the questions, and they just were basically talking about themselves and what they wanted to say. They had no care about the topic that was at hand or anyone else's opinion. They were just kind of overriding and just like, this is my opinion on anything and everything. This is my platform, and I'm going to talk about whatever I want. That's primarily it. And that's not what this sort of thing's about. It's supposed to be a discussion, not a one-man show. If you want to do that, jump on Facebook, whatever, and talk about yourself. That's, and there's been multiple people like that. New people that are excited and they have something new and they want something to talk about. And then there's some people that have done it for a long time, like me, who feel that they're more important or more interesting, and they just kind of go run on the sentence. And you just kind of sit there. Okay, just take a breath. It's okay. Hey, okay. Just let me know when you're done. It's been 10 minutes. How about you, Brian?
Oh, wow. The list is growing more every day, unfortunately. I think those are all on my list, too, as well as the person that the minute the questioner or the host reaches the period or the question mark in their question, they already are starting to answer. Not giving anyone else a chance or, to be the first person to speak. Also, right. People that just don't look engaged with the audience. Like, we're looking forward. I'm looking into my little camera up there.
Right.
We're listening to Rob, and I understand it with artists because they're working. I get that. But then as a writer, it's a little tough for me to write while I'm trying to be entertaining and somewhat informative.
Right.
But I think mostly it's engagement. And then my second level of complaint would probably be more on a technical level. Whereas somebody who thinks that sitting crumpled up in their bed with the camera, like about 2 inches from their face, with the light from the window being the only source of illumination coming from behind them. And that makes for good TV. No, even though we are talking on the interwebs, this is still a visual medium, just like comic books.
Right.
And so I think we owe it to our viewers nothing says you have to like get Klieg lights in here and big movie cameras or anything.
Yeah.
But still make an effort to have at least halfway decent lighting and to look like you are in the moment and ready to listen and to engage with the audience and with your fellow speakers.
Right. And to add to that, it's kind of your first impression with a lot of new people that you hopefully will be interested in what you're doing. And then if you need to be showing yourself and the quality and professionalism, then hopefully what you're working on will be the same exact way. If you're like wearing a wife beater and, it's kind of dark and you haven't really shaved and that sort of thing, unless you're Quentin Tarantino, you can kind of get away with that because your work speaks for itself. For new people or even older people, you have to make a first impression, or you have to make a good impression pretty much every time. And people will start talking about the things that you do and how you act and how you are. And, that only brings other people interest. Like, oh, he was easy to talk to, or oh, he actually looked nice, or he actually looked like he was interested in what was going on. Not just like, oh, I can't believe it. What's really, this is beneath my time. I have a hot pocket waiting. I need to be eating. You know what I mean? I don't know. We're of a different generation, Brian. I think we are taught a little bit differently on how to approach things on a professional level, and how you carry yourself is how people think not only about you but the stuff that you're going to be working on. Not so much nowadays, and that's kind of like as us, we need to kind of let them know, maybe set an example.
Exactly.
I will say this: one of the things that I hate is when a guest is full of it. And I'm being nice.
Rob, I'm right here. Rob, I'm right here, okay?
I'm being serious, though. I'm actually being serious. Like, I don't even want to joke about this. There are people who have gone on, and it's nothing against you, Brian, but I've heard people just spread lies and spread fears while I've been in a room, and like contemptuous lies and things that are going to hurt the industry or hurt people if they listen to it. And especially the period where we're in when we're recording this, it's a tense what is it? The big thing that blows up with the dynamite. I can't think of the word right now.
Explosion?
No, the thing that holds the dynamite. Anyway, it's not important. It's a barrel of dynamite, and it's ready to go off at any point. And you have these people who show up and go, "This is, the end of the world," and they're being serious, or they're just trying to be a smartass but acting like they're serious, and they're spreading fear. This is not the time to spread fear. And then it's also people who want to talk about Comicsgate, spread lies about it, spread lies about a creator, spread lies about this, spread rumors. And when you're on a show like that, you're not the host. And it's hard because me and Brian are hosts. We're used to it. When you have that, it's a feeling of like, oh, I need to take a shower immediately. And I'm very bad at trying to always looking down. That's why I actually muted myself and turned the camera off, is because I'm trying to share it while we're live to bring more people to the audience. But all you see is this. Right. And I don't think that's rude. I try not to do that. So whenever I have to do something behind the scenes and I'm not looking at the screen, I try to actually mute my screen unless I'm the person talking. And then there's no, oh, well, I can't help it. I'm always working. I don't stop working because I'm live on air. But I'm also advocating for people. So I think that's okay when you're helping people if you don't stop. Because some people need immediate answers. And one of the people who's always good to get answers from is Chuck, who's joining us. Chuck.
Hey, Chuck.
Who the hell to show up late?
Yeah,
that's not very.
We're about to get to punctuality.
We need to get to that quick.
Mm-hmm. And Chuck was just, Brian was just talking about people in their bedroom and how much he likes that camera angle.
This is my favorite. You know what? Here's the honest truth. Had a really bad night last night as far as sleep. Asked my kiddo, hey, make sure when my alarm goes off, you wake me up. I passed right out and woke up to this message way later than I had set my alarm to. And so they're on my computer in my area. So you get me like this.
Yeah, well, at least you showed up, though. That's
exactly,
the important part. And you're well lit. Your lighting is immaculate.
But who are you? But who are you?
Yes, who are you?
That's a great question. Hi, hey, folks. I'm Chuck Pino. I'm a writer, editor. I'm a reviewer, and all-around fun comic book dude.
All right. So
yes, we were
asking before you got here, and I don't know how much you heard of it. What's the worst mistake you've seen done by another guest while you're stuck on a show and they're just doing this? What is that gets you to like hang up and go, I forget it. It's not worth being on this show. I'm out.
Being selfish, taking all the time. I mean, the thing is that I don't understand the level of ego that is required for you to think that you're the only one on a panel who has anything to say. So I always try to get out what I have to say as quick as possible, and then either, give like a nice long pause so that everybody knows, now you can just jump in.
Yeah.
Like that one.
I feel you on that. And as I'm sharing this out, we're all going to take a look at some comments, because I did ask the audience and I wanted to be able to get some of their opinions out from the people who actually been on shows. So we went to social media today and we had to debate it. And the debate was, what is the hardest part? And I'm going to show it to you guys right now, so I'm not the only one seeing it. And here we go. What is the hardest part of being a guest on a live video show for creators? And yes, I have to actually spell out the fact a live show for creators, or people will be like, what do you mean? Like on Hollywood Squares? Like on Price? Like sometimes people just aggravate the living hell out of me. And Meredith is joining us too. We're getting an upgrade right now. Meredith, who has hosted a great show, has had the time to show up today, so I'm excited about that. Meredith, introduce yourself real quick. No pressure, Meredith.
Hey, gang. Hey, gang. I'm Meredith Loughran from Geek Insider. I am a writer. I am hopefully going to be a comic book creator pretty soon. I am also an interviewer, podcaster, and that's about it for me right now. I'm just popping in to say hi, guys.
Awesome.
I'm trying to be a good guest.
We hope so. All right. So here are some things that people, and I'm going to ask all you, because every one of you have amazing experience dealing with people. In Austin, you've also been a director, right?
Yeah, so the comics have been doing it for 26 years. My day job, I was in advertising. I was a creative director I worked for Disney and Universal and everything. I retired about a little over 4 years ago, got into film. So acting, I have some films coming out with Netflix this year and everything, but I've written, directed about 4 or 5 films. Yes, sir.
Very, very cool. So this is right up your alley too, because you're used to giving people direction and how to act. Yes. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to help people act a little better. So we got the name out of the way because someone asked about the name, and I was like, I have to literally spell it out so everyone understands. But having recently done one, the first thing was not knowing who else was going to be on it. So let's start right there. Do you guys need to know who's going to be on a panel to be on a panel? I would say no. We'll go down the line. Brian K. Morris, do you need to know who's going to be on a panel with you?
Not necessarily. I just worry about my own end of the conversation, whether I can contribute to it and sound halfway interesting while relaying whatever I know about the subject. I don't really need to know because if anything, that might make me think, oh, he or she is going to be on. I just remembered an appointment that just came up 30 seconds from now. So I don't want to get into that mindset. If anything, I can only hope that the people who don't listen to what we say in the next hour will make the rest of us look better.
Okay, and that's a pretty good thing. Austin, what about you?
No, not really. It's kind of a surprise for me, like seeing people and whatnot. Knowing what you're going to be talking about is very important. You know, having some sort of knowledge of what you're talking about instead of just getting on there and kind of floundering a little bit. At least with me, when I'm talking or doing interviews, whatever, and I just like it kind of comes second nature. Like I'll be talking, I'm like, what do you think, Chuck? So I automatically pass it to somebody else. So when I finish talking, I don't just stop. And I'm like, yeah, isn't that crazy? I mean, right, Meredith? And then that's an easy segue to go right into so she can have that conversation or whatever. And it takes the pressure off that other person of that pause, right? Who's next? You know what I mean? And also, to me, that kind of helps the moderator so they're not having to kind of like, well, what about? I think it flows a little bit easier. And that from my film background directing, that's my mindset, at least. What about you, Chuck?
That's a great question. Thank you, my brother.
Yes.
No, I don't think the other panelists matter at all. I mean, it matters as far as it's nice if you can get a good group of people together who do enjoy each other's company. But if we're all professionals, it doesn't matter whether we know each other or even like each other. So, no, I don't think that matters. The only thing that's important is the subject matter.
Yes.
And Meredith.
Yeah. I think it definitely helps if you know the people, at least casually, because then you can pass the name. Nothing is more uncomfortable than being on a panel and then going, who are you guys? So it kind of helps. But I agree with Chuck. I don't think you need to know everybody. It does help. But if you are talking about a common theme or a subject, then it shouldn't really matter. If you know what you're talking about. If you're BSing yourself through it, though, that could get uncomfortable.
Okay, so we all kind of agree. I've never cared who was on the show, actually, until the only time I care is when I hear a name that I don't want to be in a show with. And I'm suddenly like, oh, this is a bad guest, and they're going to suck the time out of the day. And I've actually told people who invite me on their shows, don't invite me if this person's going to be on. They're going to waste my time and say dumb things, and I'm going to get mad, and I'm going to put them in their place, and then, it's going to become one of those shows, and I don't want to deal with that. So,
But do you think?
Go ahead, Meredith.
Yeah, go ahead.
No,
Okay,
no,
I was going to say that should fall on the moderator or whoever's kind of organizing the panel. To stop the person in their tracks and go, okay, we're diverting off the subject. Let's get back on track.
out of all the shows I've been on, I've met two moderators who have the balls to do it right. To be honest with you, to honestly, like, I've had two who will be like, nope, we're done. We're not going down that. Stop talking about it. Don't pick that fight. That's not happening here. Those things don't get said by a lot of the. We talked about this on Friday, me and Brian, about how there are these people who run these shows that don't do that. They don't step up. They don't control it. They let the guests come on and kind of be like, I want to be your friend. I interview people. When I bring them on, they're my interviewee. Well, you guys are my panelists, but I want everyone to get an opportunity to talk. That's why I keep everything short and I try to pass the ball. I don't want to pass it back to Austin right now and see how he feels.
Well, thank you for that. The biggest point is there's a lot of people who want to do these type of shows that don't have any understanding about what running the show and being a moderating is all about. You know what I mean? And the cream of the crop rises as shows go on for the moderators who have an understanding of what the topic is going to be, who the panelists that they're asking on with the type of people that they are, and how they're going to handle them when they get all together. You as a professional, when you're doing these panels, you'll be on something that you either like or don't like, or people that you like or hate. But as a professional, you should be able to have some sort of discussion one way or another. The problem with nowadays is a lot of people think that it's my opinion, my way, and if you don't like it, you're persecuting me, and that's not the right mindset. Back then, you used to be able to say, well, I disagree with you, I respect you, but I disagree, and then you move on. That's where a moderator's like, okay, you guys don't agree on that, and that's fine, but we need to move on and go from there. And you have to have the balls to do so. Excuse me, Meredith.
Oh, Meredith has got a worse mouth than any of us. I've heard her.
Yeah.
I'm not
Hey,
worried.
my husband says I have balls that clank, so.
He does. She's
Very
probably
nice.
got the biggest set on the panel today, so I'm not worried about her. I'm worried about offending Brian because he barely curses. But then I hear him in the background, and I'm like, oh, my God, it's like a priest saying bad things. It's horrific.
That's what makes it more effective, Rob.
But to continue with what Martin said, he said the second thing, the other challenge is it's hard to know when to speak. On a panel, you can watch a fellow panelist and know when to come in for physical cues. Not as easy on a video. And a lot of that comes up to the software right now. I've had to mute people, actually. And on the panel he was on, I actually muted people because I got tired of people stepping on it. And that's guest etiquette. You really shouldn't be speaking until it's actually your turn. Someone should be like Austin said, someone should be passing you the baton. That's how something like this works. I generally don't like 6 people in the room anymore at all because it gets a little out of control and everyone tries to just blurt out what they had to say and not wait for their turn. And I find that very aggravating myself because look at this panel today. No one has stepped on anyone's toes. And when they came close, I'm sorry, you go first. No, you go first. That's how it should be. then you know what? You can look. The whole time I'm watching every one of you, and I'm looking to see whose mouth tries to move. And Chuck's been on a program where I go, hold on, Chuck was saying something, and I pass it to Chuck because everyone's trying to talk over him. And It's not about the loudest. And you know, when I'm the moderator, that's my like it was said, that's my job. Break it up. Hey, Chuck was about to say something. I saw him, and I've done it where I've broken it up, and the person was like, "Oh no, I just yawned." I'd rather make that little mistake than not make them feel I'm not paying attention. What do you think about that, Chucky? Speaking of you.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think, you know what, and I think we do have a moderator problem, especially with a lot of these online things, because for most people, a lot of it is really new. You know what I mean? Like, we've been doing this for 3 or so years, you know, but a lot of people, this is something that they're just doing and they're not a part of very often. These panels aren't kind of a normal thing online. And so everyone's just really excited to get their time, and the monitors aren't skilled. They don't understand what it takes to be a good monitor. And I have to say, when I had to monitor my first panel the other day, I was very careful in who I got on my panel, that they all had the information that they needed. And then I talked to them all beforehand. I said, you know, I want 2 or 3 minute answers from everybody, if you can give that. I don't want anyone going on too long. Like, I kind of had a talk with them beforehand, just so they were aware of the kind of etiquette that I was looking for. Just because if they didn't want to be able to follow that, they could walk away before we even started.
Chuck, pass it, Chuck. Pass it to someone, Chuck, like a joint, pass it.
Yeah. Meredith, take a puff on that. What do you think?
Well, you know what? I had an interview yesterday with a team, and one of the team members was from India. So I was dealing with a language barrier. You know, so English was a second language, and he wasn't comfortable because he's never been on a forum like this before. So I had to divert real quickly. I was like, okay, how am I going to feed this guy questions so it isn't complete dead air? And then he didn't have the time to process and figure out what I was trying to say, translate it, you know, and then in his mind think of how he was going to respond. So what I did was I said, I'm going to get right back to him. I'm going to pass the ball to the next person, let them answer. And then I was in private chat typing the question to him, so that he had the time to translate it, and then he could come back with an answer. And that worked out, but it took a few minutes to get used to that. But he was such a gracious guest, you know, trying to keep it on the subject here, that he was able to work with me. And I probably have to go because my dogs are going to bark. I'm going to be a good guest and get the hell out of here.
Okay.
Thanks for being on with us, Meredith. So what do you think, Austin? I'll pass it to you.
With what she was saying, or who?
What Martin was asking about knowing when to speak, because you've been on a bunch of shows.
Yeah.
How do you know when it's your turn to speak on a panel?
I'm one of those people. I'm kind of like, so you kind of see. I'm like, yeah. So I'm not really saying it, but I'm like doing a hand gesture, so like kind of like your hand up, sort of thing. Oh, me next. That's kind of how I do it. If there's no real cues, that's kind of like my, hey, I got something to say. Yeah, people talking over each other. It's kind of funny. It's kind of like you're on the phone and it's like, and then you talk, and then you talk at the same time. You know, you don't have that kind of rhythm. So for people that haven't been on quite a bit and they want to talk, doing something like this kind of helps a little bit, because visually they can see, I think he wants to say something. You know what I mean? Or like, excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom, or, you know, something silly like that. Until you can get into the rhythm of it. Once you've been talking for a little while and people get comfortable with how the people are talking, I think there's a rhythm that happens too. And people can kind of know when to slide in and slide out. But again, that's why I'm like saying, that's what I think. How about you, Brian? And then it goes to Brian.
All right. Thank you, Austin. I think you make some excellent points there. And one thing I would like to add is that a host should be able to vet who is on. And you can tell usually just by how you converse with them. Does every sentence start with I on the potential guest part? Well, maybe they're not so prone to a conversation, or maybe the guests themselves ought to go over their own resume and figure out, well, do I really have anything to contribute to this discussion? I know some people had asked me, well, can I get on this? Can I get like on IndieVolt? Because I want to talk to these people. No, this isn't your chance to hobnob. You are there not for the other people so much in the room as you are the people watching on the internet.
Right.
That, this whole show is about what people can pick up from us as far as being a good guest. I would also liken it to being a good guest in someone's home. You should know the format, if at all possible. You should know what the subject is and whether you can contribute to it, because there might be a day when you can really get on a show and really shine with your particular subject. And rather than try to fumble your way through something you only know a little bit about. So, check your own self, and, host, check your guests. And and some guests will, need experience. I'm seeing a couple people come out of the gate a couple weeks ago, and they're already turning into somebody I would ask onto a show I was moderating.
Sure.
But it takes time. You have to give them that chance to either sink or swim, or at least show something that you think is worth developing. And then, wouldn't you agree, Rob?
I definitely think that there definitely needs to be more control of a show from both the guests themselves and self-control and learning the environment. Like Austin said at the very beginning of this, you're a guest. Act like a guest. Act like a professional. Learn when not to make a joke. It's not always funny. Don't try to tell a joke to be funny when you're interrupting everything. You know what I mean? Like, especially if someone's trying to make a serious point. That's one thing that always infuriates me in the middle of this, is when you're on a bigger show and you're making a solid point and someone takes the minute to decide to tell a fart joke. It's like, no, and I'll hammer a person for that, and I'll be like, no, I'm being serious, and I'll shut the room down as a guest because I think it's unprofessional. If I'm trying to talk about something important, I don't need someone making it a fart joke, and I do think that that's one thing. It's a good point you bring up, Brian. People don't know when to stop telling the joke and when to stop trying to be funny. Yeah. And we've talked about that. That's one of the worst things. There are a lot of people who want to laugh and giggle like schoolgirls, and they forget that you're being watched. You're being judged. This is something that can be brought up later in your career. And it could literally be the determining factor of you getting hired to work for Marvel or DC or not getting hired for them, because it'll be one stupid comment you make. And a lot of people forget that when they're live. And I make a lot of dumb comments, but I'm willing to own every single one of them. There are other people that you can tell they're just not ready to own them. And we've seen backlash on some of these videos where people are like, oh, well, that's not really what I meant. And I'm clear to be like, before you twist my words, and I know it already. So I do agree with that. Martin goes on to say Roland goes on to say from what Martin was saying, that he's speaking about speaking in turns. Another thing I think when talking to creators is knowing at just what level they are. I'm not talking talent or anything, but experience. Do they know what a Marvel style plot is? I'm not sure what the knowledge base is, and I never want to come off talking down to someone who might already know stuff. I think that just to me, usually I agree with Roland on this one. I'm going to disagree for one reason. You're not there for other panelists when you're on a panel. We're here to educate the people watching. Those of you who are tuning in right now, we love you. We appreciate you. We're giving you our time so you can be better. So I'm here for you. I'm not here for the panelists next to me. I'm not here for Jackson in this corner listening to his phone. I'm here for you guys to try to help give what I know to you. So if one of you guys know better, I'll applaud you. And I just learned something on a panel. I don't need to know what anyone else knows on the panel. I just need to make sure that what I say is accurate and true. What do you think, Austin?
Well, I think Chuck had a point, didn't you, Chuck?
I was actually just kind of getting into and thank you. That was very gracious of you, by the way. Mm-hmm. I was actually trying to comment on the idea of education over entertainment. And because we were talking about cracking the jokes and whatnot. And I mean, you guys know me. I love to have a good time. I am a bit of a jokester. But at the end of the day, what do we really need to get out there the most? So, in something like this, it's nice for us to, break the ice a little bit and have a little bit of fun. But really, we do all have to come off as professional, because that's exactly what we're talking about. So it's really about knowing your audience, knowing your subject, and understanding how much of this right now is education and how much of this is entertainment. So for this, about 90% needs to be education. And then we got that little bit of time to kind of fool around. What about you, Austin?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And what people need to remember is, even though this is live, it's being taped. So hopefully a lot more people will be watching it later on and getting something from it, and passing it on to other people who are going to be watching it, hopefully. And these might be people that are decision makers on possibly your career. So you always have to have an understanding how you carry yourself, whether it's knowing what you're talking about or how you're treating your other guests or the moderator or anything like that. To get to Rowan's point, yeah, having experience in the comic book industry for years can go quite a long way when talking about certain things. You're not really an expert, but you've had experience on certain things like this. Like, for example, when I first got into comic books and went to comic book shows, it was a novelty for anyone to bring photocopy images of your drawings, period. I did it in 1995, and I had black and white Xerox copies, and Joe Matt or Eric came to me and asked me what this stuff was, and I said, it's my drawings. I just wanted to, and I was selling for 25 cents a piece, and he just, like, it blew his mind. He had no idea. And this is Joe Matt, who was working on X-Men at the time. So it's a teachable moment. So these are the type of things that when someone's talking about it, you can say, oh, I remember when I did such and such. And that can hopefully build, and other people can piggy onto that, giving their experience and knowledge. And then you have this whole, really awesome nugget of wisdom that people can go back to and watch later on. That's to me, that's more important than showing that you're funny or you're interesting or whatnot. You know what I mean? Yes, Chuck, having fun and you want to make it somewhat not super boring, like you're talking about rocks and geology and whatnot. You want to have some sort of entertainment value, but jokes for sake of jokes is not entertaining. It can be annoying after a while, especially when you want to actually hear something about, speaking properly or having the right kind of mics or the right kind of lighting or whatnot. These are just simple tools that will help elevate you hopefully later on in how you carry yourself. I mean, Brian, what do you think about that?
I agree completely. And as the person who interrupted Rob earlier to make a joke, I will own that. I own that completely. But that's my style of delivery. And notice I've been quiet ever since in my defense. But anyway, no. I agree with that. And I think another thing that some bad guests tend to do is like interrupt just to show that they know more than someone else about a particular subject. Especially, it's especially telling when it's clear that you don't. Like, that's why it's helpful to have a history, an awareness of the history of the medium. One time I got into a debate with somebody, this was real life, and they said, Superman, DC ought to do him the way he was done when he was created by John Byrne. And at that moment, I'm like, the conversation's over because I'm not the jackass whisperer. And so you don't necessarily want to be the jackass whisperer, nor do you want to be the person whispered to. You should have a firm history. You should have a firm knowledge, rather, of what the topic is and be able to deliver it in as concise a way as possible. And at the same by the same token, with a little bit of enthusiasm. I would say enthusiasm gets me through a lot of stuff, rather than somebody's like, yeah, I really liked X-Men when that guy before the last guy wrote it, sort of thing. It's like, that's the quickest way to make sure you never get a repeat performance. But if you're well versed on the subject, no matter what it is, and you can present it with a certain amount of enthusiasm. And what were you mentioning earlier about hand gestures, Austin?
Yeah.
So that I think that's part of how you carry yourself on screen. You want to be knowledgeable, but you don't want to be the know-it-all. What do you think, Rob?
I agree. I don't like the echoers. I hate the people who I just said everything that needed to be said, and the next guy comes in and mansplains it for everybody. Like I wasn't clear with the words. Like I'm not a writer and I don't know how to pick words. And speaking of you interrupting me, yours was fine because it was just you trying to be a sense of humor person. I'm talking about people literally in the middle of a sentence interrupting you. You had waited for a break. I mean, I've had people on shows where I'm like, I want to talk about my book Barber Unleashed, and enter a fetish joke right there before I can finish talking. Yeah. And then you'll see an angry devil. And you'll see me instantly turn red. Horns pop out, and then there's comments being thrown. But, that's, again, with the host. The host should be like, don't interrupt while people are talking, because I will say that. I understand the natural break. You're having a conversation, and we all have a sense of humor. We all are going to give a zinger to each other. That I understand, but just be respectful. I know Brian a long time. It's very hard for him to offend me because I know him so long, and I know he means nothing by it. But if you especially, and this is an important reason I'm bringing this up, hey, Jax, shh. You don't know about how to run a panel. If you're talking and you're saying things that are affecting people on the panel, and you're not paying attention that you're affecting them, you're just an a-hole, and you should not be on a show anymore. And that's what's going to happen. No one will ever put you on a show. Which brings us to our next question, which I'm not exactly sure how to do this. I'll throw it out to you guys. I don't know what he meant by this. Judging reaction of fans. On at least here on a video, we don't get to judge the reaction of fans. On a real panel, yes. I can tell a joke, I can see how the room is, but I don't know if I can feel the room right now. Chuck, were you going to say something?
It is hard to feel the room, but because you do put questions and comments up, you can kind of feel where they're at a little bit. So if that does happen often enough, you got to just kind of take every cue you can get. And that was something I was going to mention earlier, is also you need to listen to the other guests. You can't say your thing and then tune out because they're below me or they're dumb or whatever. You know what I mean? I get it. If someone drones on, you might shut down. The audience probably shut down too. I understand when it gets there. But if someone is really giving some good, consistent, concise points of view, give them the respect and listen to what they have to say.
Did anyone else want to comment on that?
Yeah, I will say, even if for some reason you don't agree with what they're saying, be professional and just kind of do the respect them, or just kind of like because you don't agree, but again, that's his opinion or her opinion, and just kind of let it go. Because if you're going to say something about that, then that starts somewhat of an argument, and that's not the point of the panel to begin with at all. You know what I mean? You're there to talk about topics and answer questions. You're not getting into a debate with fellow panelists. You wait till you're off panel, and then you have a conversation. So
go with something like, Rob, I told you not to say those dumb things when I was with you. Austin has done it to me. He's berated me, and he's told me, don't ever talk about art again. You have no idea what it is. Brian, what do you think?
Given the type of show that I do, which is basically a one-on-one interview with every guest that comes in and makes a comment, I have had some people that have said some things that I don't agree with, and and I'll do that, like Austin said, I'll be like, okay, whatever, well, that's not quite, I don't quite agree, but I'm going to move on. It's only when they start to present things that I know are blatantly wrong, things that are just like not at all rooted in reality. And especially if it gets, because oftentimes that sort of thing veers into like religion and or politics, which I would just as soon avoid like the plague or the coronavirus right now. I think the only person who should be an a-hole on my show is me. And I'm willing to take those stands, but I'm not necessarily wanting anyone who comes into my area of influence to be that jerk and to wind up taking any sort of heat from it. Because I've got armor plating as far as my ego goes. I can take a few hits, but the person who came in and says, I think so-and-so is the greatest politician ever, or I just love being a name the religion, and all the others are going to, simmer in heck for all eternity if they don't believe what I do. Okay, then I'm going to give them a mid-course correction, and suddenly I don't see their comments anymore. Funny how that works with Facebook, but there are ways to deal with it. But unfortunately, like with the kind of things that all of us do here online, sometimes we don't find out about the mood of the room until afterwards, when we get the comments from our friends, like, Brian, you shouldn't have interrupted Rob. You were a jerk. Who do you think you are? Or, see, Rob, they'll defend you. Like, why did you have so-and-so on? Why can't you alert the mothership he needs to go home? You get comments like that. And unfortunately, it's only after the fact that you really have a way to to read the room, unfortunately. So that's where a strong moderator has to take the reins and either give like I said, a mid-course correction, or else make sure certain people don't come back on the show.
I think this is more of a statement by Josh, so I don't actually think that. I mean, if anyone wants to jump in, I'll read it and we'll open it up for discussion. But there is a fine line of explaining to listeners without over-explaining or telling, and of course keeping it in topic, especially if the guest's side tangent as well, or if the other guest's side tangent. I guess he's talking about the Kevin Smith people who show up on the show, and you ask him, well, what color did you like the sky? And the next thing you know, you're hearing about how they were having kidney stones removed. I definitely think that can be problematic. What do you guys think about that?
I'll take this one. As usually the person who is the person with the attention deficit on my show, I agree that it is tough to stay on topic sometimes, especially when it is so broad a question that there are all kinds of permutations to it. But I think as a guest, we've got to learn to rein it in and to stay on the topic at hand with as close to laser precision as possible. Austin, what about you?
Well, if it's a broad question, I try to either clarify to a more of a specific, or I'll just pick a specific part and say, well, for this, and I'll tell what it is about, and then go into what I'm thinking, and then kind of go from there. Otherwise, yeah, you could have a dissertation that goes 30 minutes on, on how broad of a topic, or you throw it back to the moderator. I'm like, oh, is there something specific about this topic? Or is it just kind of broad term? If they say, oh, it's broad term, like, well, I don't know any of that, but for this part that fits, and then kind of keep on and just focus on that one specific thing. Because I try not to go on tangents. Sometimes I do very long answers, and then I usually say to get back to what I'm, first going to try to explain. Don't give me too much rope, because I can really over explain on some things. I try not to. But there are times I just kind of it just kind of goes like this, and I have to rein myself in. You don't do that, do you, Chuck?
Yeah, I think we all do. Everybody loves the camera. Let's be honest. I'm going to have to disagree with you this time, my homie. But no, man, you know what? I think, and I really liked what you said. I think it's really important when we do get those broad questions to be able to go, well, my experience leads me to be able to discuss this part about it. And this is maybe where I know the most about it. I think also it's also important to be able to be honest with people and say, I don't really know a lot about that. I can't really add anything to this part of the conversation. And that's a perfectly fine thing to say. I think people really appreciate it. You haven't wasted anybody's time. And we know that when we're talking about that specific thing, maybe you're not the person to go to, and we'll bring you up when you do have more knowledge.
I just want to add to that. And it's funny that you say that. So I was actually on a panel, and they actually said, so what do you think, Austin? And I had to say, I have absolutely no experience or knowledge on this, and I really can't answer it. So the moderator goes, no, but what do you think? I said, I think I have absolutely no idea about this topic, and if I try to answer, I'm just going to sound foolish. So I'm going to respectfully pass it to another. And the moderator goes, so you have no opinion? I go, my opinion is I haven't got a clue. That's my opinion. I'm sorry. And he got mad at me because I wouldn't give some sort of answer. And I'm not going to just throw anything out there for the sake of a soundbite. If I don't know about something, I'm like, yeah, I don't. That's not really my area. They know more about it than I do. I'm going to listen to them, so maybe I learned something. That's what I'll say. But the moderator got upset with me because I wouldn't click add to the topic, and I'm like, I don't know, I got nothing, man. What do you want me to do?
Yeah, bad moderating can kill.
Yeah.
That's definitely a thing. Few more comments. Dennis Knight had said being prepared for the topics that will be discussed. I think we already touched on that. Some of it's life, but just life lessons we're ready. We don't have to study, and sometimes you do have to do a little bit of study, especially if you're going to be talking about something you're, as Austin was saying, not knowledgeable about. And you've been invited. You can take that time to crack open a book and see if you can gain knowledge about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we touched on that. Davy Jones says, never been invited to appear on one. I have no idea. Well, that's partly on you. If you haven't been invited, it's because you're not putting out there that you want to be a guest. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Completely.
Yeah.
You gotta shake that ass. You know, you got to get them to see you. You got to get them to notice you, man. Dress up, do what you got to do. Even ask. There's no harm in asking. I have a Kickstarter right now. I've been asking everyone and their grandmother, you have a show? Can I be on it? Let's talk Cat Dad and Supermom. I don't care. But then I get invited to shows. I get to be on shows. I had several interviews in the last week alone. Why are you smiling, Chuck?
Because I had my hand up to talk, and then Austin was such a good dude. He's like pointing down at me. Like, we're doing some great Hollywood Squares stuff going on. I love it. Oh my goodness! And where were we talking about? Wow, that was just so funny.
Getting on a show.
Pardon me,
getting on a show. How do you get on a show, Chuck? Not by answering who you are.
So, the reason why I wanted to jump in is because Brian K. Morris and Austin and even Rob, they've been around a lot longer than myself. I've been doing this for about 3 or 4 years or so, but I think a lot of people can tell you I'm on a lot of shows. I get out there an awful lot. First off, I've worked really hard to study, to learn, to know what I'm talking about. But also, I ask. And if you don't want me on the show, I won't get on. There's lots of shows I haven't gotten on. But there's an awful lot I have just because I put the time in, I cared, and I am a good guest. I'm entertaining, and I have knowledge, and I don't talk crap, and I don't make other people feel bad for being there. So, and, you know, I a lot of times wouldn't even deserve to be on the same stage as these amazing people. But because I have gotten out there, I've gotten the experience, and I've asked repeatedly, hey, do you need a guest? We can talk about this. Do you need a guest? It's gotten me on shows, and that persistence will take you a long way.
It's true.
You have to advocate for yourself.
Right. And I don't think
they're going to beg you to be on their show, you know?
But just to touch on that, and this isn't against anyone. This is actually to advocate for everyone. I think everyone has a moment where they belong on a stage. It's just making sure you're in your right moment and on the stage at the right time. Don't be the person who's on a stage who doesn't know anything. Like, don't join a panel about being a writer if you're an artist and you've never written anything. You're going to stick out like a sore thumb. When we first started these a few weeks ago, I would have people be like, oh, I want to be on that panel. And I upset some people because I was like, why? Why do you want to be on this panel? I know your career. You wouldn't add to anything, and people don't like hearing it. But again, this is about you watching. I have to guard you, and this is about the guests that are giving me their time. I'm not going to bring on some new rookie creator who doesn't know what they're talking about and waste all their time. I'm sorry.
Well, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Another good way to tell if you have the potential to be a good guest, aside from how you present yourself and how you approach the host. Hi, Meredith. A good way is for the host to look at your social media, look at your posts. Are you fairly articulate in what you post, or do you just retweet, for lack of a better term? Do you innovate? Do you speak fairly concisely? There are some people that I think are wonderful people that I've met in real life. I would never have them on any of my shows because, you can ask them what time it is and they'll give you the history of clockmaking. So you have to, one way they can tell whether you might be a good guest is simply have an entertaining social profile. That might go a long way. And you could say, hey, listen, I'd love to be on your show. Hey, take a look at my page and let me know if you think I might be a good fit for what you're doing.
Meredith, you've been listening from behind. Do you have anything to add to this?
I did, but I lost my train of thought here.
Oh,
You got
Bad guess, bad.
You've been chucked.
You've been.
No, okay. Oh, I remember what it was. So, some people, a lot of people, unfortunately, they don't like marketing themselves. It took me a really long time to say, "Hey, I'm Meredith Loughran. I'm a writer. I do this, blah 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 blah." And you know what? You had a StreamYard link, and I clicked it. I was like, I got something to say. Not because I was invited, but I took the opportunity to say, hey, I could use the camera time because I've got a goal and I'm doing this and I've got this going on and stuff like that. A lot of people are really not comfortable doing that, and you just really have to get over yourself, because at some point we're all going to look foolish. We're all going to make mistakes, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world.
Austin, you had something.
Chuck.
I just want to add to that for Chuck. I will say it took me a long time to start promoting myself for shows and the comic book stuff, but on social media I was never really kind of good. I only used Instagram when I was at shows to kind of let people know what I was doing, but I didn't really do a whole lot. It wasn't until I got into film and got into acting that I really learned the value of self-promotion and your brand. Branding yourself as well as branding your work is actually extremely important. As whatever you're doing, writing, arts, publishing, and being an actor, I have to go on Instagram and post once a day in order to keep my thing up here. I have to go do certain Twitter. Like my manager keeps telling me I'm not doing enough, and I'm like, but I'm not doing anything. What don't people want it? But you have to keep yourself up to a certain level. There's all these algorithms, and Facebook drives me absolutely insane because I see people who post things and they get a lot of interactions. I post certain things, I get near to nothing, and it's has nothing to do with me personally. It has to do with algorithms. But if you're going to be able to say that I do this, this, and this, I need to be on these shows. Okay, that's great. Are you going to promote me being on this show? How are you going to do that? Are you going to be putting it on Facebook, or is it Instagram and or Twitter? Or do you have a website? How many people do you have follow? You know what I mean? Because you need to be able to show the value of you being on certain shows and doing certain things. And that all goes back to raising the awareness of you and promoting yourself. And it's tough. It really is tough, because that's not me at all. I want to do the work. But unfortunately, if you want to keep getting up there and getting better in today's world, this is what we have to do. What do you think, Chuck?
You know what? I can agree with that. I think there's ways around it, and of course, engagement, that's almost a whole other conversation, really. But yeah, for the most part, I can agree with that.
Cool.
All right, one final comment from Robert Lentz. He says, suddenly losing the ability to communicate verbally. We all get tongue-tied at times. That's just a thing that happens. You can't help it. Does anyone have any advice on how to avoid it? How to regain, I should say. 'Cause you can't avoid it, but how do you regain? Go ahead, Austin.
Take a breath. If you get a little tongue-tied, just kind of laugh, and then kind of keep on going. And if you go a little brain fart, it's like, my brain's dead, come back to me, and then give it to somebody else while you kind of recoup yourself. And that's okay. That is an organic moment that everyone's done, and they can appreciate it. They won't think anything bad about you. They're just like, oh, well, yeah, that happens. And then hopefully you'll be able to jump in with something important or interesting, or you can remember what you were going to say in the first place. Because, dude, that happens all the time with me, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Austin. I'm doing a daily show, as I've been doing for the last month and a half. I've noticed that I sometimes lose names. I get like this strange aphasia as far as names go. One thing I do is, like you suggested, kind of own it to a degree with whatever good grace I am able to muster up at that moment, or explain that I'm a lot older. I'm older than all of you put together, probably, but or make a joke out of it, or just simply try to. If you start to know the areas that you start to lose the language, try to avoid those areas. Like I know that my problem when I'm doing my show is proper names.
Yeah.
And when I do a show, sometimes I just write down everybody's name so I don't call them the wrong thing. So, note taking is also a good sign of a good guest. That shows that you're paying attention. There we go, Meredith. Meredith's got it. She knows what's going on. But just know where your weaknesses lie and do your best to avoid them. And if you can't help but go into those dangerous waters, then just own it and try to get through it as quickly as possible. But don't stop doing it. The worst thing that I think you can do on shows like this is dead air, where you're like, like the deer in the headlights thing. You just got to barrel through no matter what. Yeah, Meredith knows. So that's why I'm going to throw it to Meredith next, and then she can throw it to Chuck.
Before you throw it anywhere, we are at the 1 hour mark. We are planning to go longer. If anyone had to leave at the 1 hour mark, now is the time to say goodbye. If not, we're just going to continue on.
I'm good.
I'll leave for a second and get a drink, but you can look at my background. But other than that, I'm good.
Okay, good. Cool. So Meredith, go ahead.
Well, piggybacking on what Brian had to say, you have to be honest as a moderator and as a guest. If you don't know what the question is, pass the ball. And that's okay. There's that certain amount of honesty. If you're trying to BS your way through it, chances are you might not be invited back, and people are going to call out bullshit. It's really that simple. But a lot of people don't want to do that because it puts them in a vulnerable place to say, I don't know. And I don't know why that's such a big deal.
All right. Carl Whitman said, we're done with that topic. Everyone good?
Yeah.
Okay. Carl Whitman says, on panels that I've been on, not on comics, I've had both good and bad moderators and learned that a lot hinges on the moderator. I completely agree. I don't know if we really have to dive into this one too much. I think this one just is more of a statement that we could all agree with. So we're just going to move on to, hold on. Comments. Josh Lyman says, you guys pretty much covered what I was talking about over the last few minutes. Keeping on topic, finding a good way to interact with fellow guests and hosts that isn't attacking or taking over, and then go have the discussion offline, off recording. That makes sense. I totally agree with that. Sometimes you do need to have some of those conversations offline. When you want to tell that really cool story, but you have 6 other guests, don't tell a really cool story. Unless you can nail it in about 2 minutes, don't do it.
Whoa.
Very true.
All right. And I'm just going to quickly switch screens. One thing I do want to talk about, and I know it's been brought up once or twice, one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever seen, and this comes from my manager background, is when you're in a conversation, have a notepad in front of you. The notepad helps you take notes, and it lets you be able to ask a question later and even comment. And if you're focusing on taking notes, you're not focusing on trying to interrupt someone. It literally stops you from trying to interrupt anyone because, you are literally taking notes. Yeah, so I do the same thing. I've got notepads, and I even do it on my phone during certain places where I'm at. That's something you need to do. It helps you stay on point, it's just one of the most amazing tools you can have as a guest, a notepad. I'm serious. It'll help you not be one of the extra voices, and you'll be the last one to speak. And by the time you're speaking, you'll be able to fulfill everything that you wanted to do. And Meredith knows where to keep her notes. All right, so we're gonna bring in a different screen now, and this screen is gonna Jack say, "Hey, relax, crazy kid." This one's gonna let me just put away something real quick. This one is going to be about our comment section. So we're going to do a cool thing where we're going to see ourselves on TV. How often do you guys get to do that?
Ooh.
Not often enough.
Look at that. We're watching ourselves. It's meta right now. It is so meta, guys. All right, so we're going to read some comments in here, and we're going to have some fun with Oh, we're just going to take down this comment. There we go. And that'll come down in a minute. All right, so here we go. Some comments from today's show. We'll start all the way at the top. Sarah, hi there. Sarah said drank, ROLOF. And then she said, this is a show that I wanted to hear. So thank you. You're welcome, Sarah.
Yep.
Gary Anderson said, good afternoon. Tyler Carpenter.
Gary Anderson. Sorry.
Tyler Carpenter says, hey. And then he says, this is one of the interesting comments I wanted to bring up. I've only had a couple of bad guests on the show. So Marcel Dupree was on the show as a heads up. It wasn't that the guests were bad, but they weren't energetic about the topic we were talking about that they have chosen. And it was hard to keep the conversation going. Have you guys noticed that as a problem where you're suddenly on a show where they can't keep people engaged?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sometimes that just kind of happens. Like they'll think it's a really interesting conversation point to kind of talk about or a topic, but there isn't a whole lot of meat to it. It's kind of, you could talk about it maybe 5-10 minutes, but they want to do an hour. So you're like, there's only so much different ways you can talk about a very, very, very specific, tiny little thing. You know what I mean? So when you're picking a topic, I think you need to have something that can be spoke about in different parts and different interesting things. And it kind of happens. And then you have some people that picked the idea because they weren't really sure. They just kind of threw it out there because they thought it might be interesting. But then when they got to it, they're like, it was not really that interesting. I saw Chuck cut his thing up. So go ahead, Chuck.
And you're totally right. I mean, it does happen. I know that last year at Comic Palooza, I was graciously and really nicely offered a panel because the person who was doing the panel wasn't able to show up. And so Rob got in touch. He said, Chuck, you're going to be there. Do you want to do a panel? Oh, you're darn right I do. Didn't even care what it was about. And I really don't remember the subject that much. I do remember that when I heard it, I was like, really? Okay. And so I ran out and I literally met, I knew some other guys who were going to be there. And I said, you know what? We haven't talked before, but I really like you. I like what you have to say. I've seen your stuff on Facebook and Twitter. Would you like to would you like to do this panel? And they're like, yeah, okay, fine. So we went up there. We both kind of realized we were doing good, but the subject didn't interest us too much. And the people didn't seem all that interested in it. And so at one point we just said, hey, look, guys, this panel was created by someone else, but we do have a lot to offer and a lot of information to offer. And obviously there's not an awful lot of you in here. So if you have any questions about any subject that has to do with indie comics, please raise your hands and we'll gladly help you. And we kind of turned it into more of a Q&A. So there's ways to save it. And I don't think that you have to die on the sword of this is our subject. If the subject loses its meat and you find that people can't talk intelligently about it, maybe we got to pivot,
True.
And that's a solid point. I do think a lot of people, again, goes back to the moderator there. A lot of this also is bad stuff with moderators that allow guests to get carried away. You need a moderator who sticks their foot in it when they need to and breaks up the little fights, but also keeps the wheels going. Like if you notice no one cares about a topic, next topic. It's that simple. Keep it going, keep it moving, keep everyone excited about what's going on. So we're going to get back to our comments right now from some amazing people.
Cool.
Sarah said, hello. Hold on one second. Facebook reloaded on me. So she had a problem with her computer. It rebooted on her. And for some reason that rebooted our comment section. So I'm reloading. Like, if you notice no one cares about a topic, next topic. It's that. And there's my voice. So we're back live with it. Okay, so I can bring it back up. Here we go. Here it comes.
Very excited.
You guys see it?
No. There we go.
There it is. Okay, so a little bit of a technical snafu, no worries. All right, so here we go. We're talking. There we go. Okay, so I even still have it highlighted where we were. Okay, so Sarah said, I keep finding Brian K. Murris. I swear I'm stalking him somehow. It's stalking if he wants you to follow him. I'm just saying, I don't think that's stalking. Tyler Carpenter said that there's been a few times when I've been a guest on the show and I didn't like the person on there, and we clashed mainly because we both don't like each other. So that's happened. Honestly, I've always said, I don't know about you guys, but I've always said professionally, unless I'm in a debate, if I let you know I don't like someone, I did something wrong. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Austin?
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned that before. Regardless if you don't like someone or whatever, you're there on the panel to talk about topics, not your own personal opinion. That's the professionalism of who you are. You know what I mean? I'm sure that people who go on the Bill Maher show don't all love and, want to throw kisses at them, but they do the show because they want to talk about topics. That's why you're on the panel, that you want to educate, you want to talk about certain things. Hopefully you can give some nuggets of wisdoms and put your point of views out there, and that's basically it. And if you don't like the person, then you go off. When you're done with the panel, then you either talk or you go outside and have a much longer talk. You know what I mean? But just because you don't like someone doesn't mean you're like, I'm not going to talk because I don't like this person. I don't care if I got invited to the panel or not. You're doing yourself a disservice, the moderator a disservice, the people who came to see you or hear what's going on, and you won't get asked to another panel because you're a bad panelist, period. And the guy that you don't like, who you might think is a jerk or whatever, he's invited back because he engaged and you didn't. So you're only hurting yourself.
And what were you saying?
What?
Well, I was going to say, what were you saying, Chuck? Because Chuck started to talk.
Oh, sorry, Chuck.
No, no, not at all. No, I was just agreeing with the statement. It was a little more wide open at that point. But yeah, I was just agreeing with the statement. You shouldn't know that, or the fans shouldn't know that you don't particularly enjoy that person. Though, that's what the after show or afterwards is always about. Someone says, "Oh man, that was interesting, but you didn't seem to be all that engaged." Well, you know what? I have a hard time engaging with that person. We don't get along very well. Oh, okay. Like something that might have to be mentioned or that you can mention later on, but it's not something that should be abundantly clear at the time. You're here to either entertain or educate or both. If you're doing your job, then that shouldn't come into the mix unless it's like some kind of Maury style show where they want the drama. And I have felt that from some moderators where it's like, oh, no, you put us on a panel together for a reason. You wanted this to get a little beefy. Okay, I get you.
Yeah, little Jerry Springer going on there.
And Indian Vault comes live to you on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. and Thursday morning. And Brian, you have a little more difficult job because you have to read everyone's comments, and I'm sure there are people who show up that you're just like, not this son of a... So how do you handle that? Do you take a breath? Do you try to avoid those comments, or do you just grin and bear it?
Most of the time I grin and bear it because, time and place. This isn't a time and place for me to, start laying into one of my my viewers just because I don't agree with them. In fact, I use that as kind of an educational moment for me as well, because maybe I don't know everything I need to know about a particular subject. I learn probably more than anyone else that comes on the show, but I have had people who have behaved poorly, and I will tell them gently, and I'll almost try again. I'll fall back on humor, try to make a joke out of it. Well, I'm, thanks for trying to take over, but it's my show, etc. So let's move on. I have only had to tell one person on the air, I am not reading your comments, because it was something that was, one, disruptive, two, it was basically the person showing how clever they were. And it's one thing to show you're clever when you are clever, but then it's another thing to not be clever and try to make everyone think you are, which was the latter case in this point. So I did just say, okay, I'm not reading your comments if they're going to be like this. And then, it happens like 2 or 3 more shows. They have the option of either straightening up and flying right, or they just don't have to show up at all. Fortunately, they straightened up. So hopefully it was a good moment it was a teaching moment for them. And they actually became a much better guest from that point on for a long time.
Meredith, as someone who's new to this and you're just developing now, being a host and having these different people on. Have you found that some people try to take over your show at times, and you've had to kind of be like, no, I'm still in charge?
Well, I've had a lot of stuttering starts over the years. I would say probably my first attempt at podcasting was about 5 or 6 years ago. And because I have some experience in the newspaper and interviewing people and talking to people, plus retail also helps. If you've ever been in retail, when you're in front of your customer, you have to turn it on, because if you don't, they don't really have a reason to come back. So, when I have people who are coming in, I actually say, this is the topic, and I'll try and divert, and I'll try and be kind, because I'm not a mean person, and I'm not an egomaniac either. I like to ask the question, then shut up and listen for the answer, so that I can take my notes and figure out what the next question might be, because a lot of times I don't have that structured interview. I just go by listening, and moving forward. And a lot of times it becomes a casual conversation. So my show has become more of that. Whereas when I don't have a guest lined up and I'm trying to do a solo like Brian, it's miserable. And I hate it. And I think people can tell. So I think it's like, know your role, know your lane, get comfortable with that and build on that. But when it comes to guests, I don't have a problem saying, okay, we need to stop for a second. Let's move on to the next thing. Or, hey, I have to put in a little 30-second bump in here for my commercial so we can pay the bills.
That makes sense. All right, so getting back to some of these comments, if we're done, we have a couple more comments to get through.
Okay.
Here we go to the big screen. We did Tyler's. There we go. We're over here. So Gary Henderson says, you guys have the best shows, very good topics related to indie comics. We try, Gary. We try. And it's always about the guests. If I didn't have great guests, you guys wouldn't bother watching. So I thank the guests for being here with us today. Tyler Carpenter said, honestly, having Chuck Pinot as a guest is always freaking awesome. I got to get you again, bro. So apparently you have someone who has a man crush on you, Chuck.
I'll take it. I'll own it.
I'm also liking the baton passing thing. Great job, peeps. And that's what I try to do on my panels. Every so often I get a few loudmouth people who I got to kind of reel in. But for the most part, we've been real lucky with these panels that everyone – the only time it gets bad is when 6 people are there, because all 6 people try really hard to answer right away. Like it's a race. And I remember, Chuck, you were on one show where we had 9 people, and we were floating people in. You could only talk if your screen was open, because I was not going to do that. But we wound up making it work. So, it is about giving everyone the same amount of time. Matt Knowles proves he doesn't understand fractions by saying, Brian K. Morris, your points are 1,000.674% correct. Great stuff. That's that new math, I think. Josh said mutual responsibility for courtesy and common sense is definitely the key. I think we all agreed with that. Sarah said, had to hard drive reboot. We had said that earlier when we were getting the reload. Thank you for having this as a topic. You're welcome, Sarah. I like how people listen on the panel when someone else is talking. They can use hand and facial gestures without talking, which is good to see when it's positive, and that I definitely agree with. And finally, Sarah says to us, that's right. All you have to do for anything is to ask. The worst thing you can do is get a no. And that's true. And I think that's referring back to the guest question. How do you become a guest? If you're not a guest, it's because you're not trying. It's that simple. No one's just going to come up to you and be like, hi, will you be my guest? It's not high school. You're not the pretty girl. You got to be the person walking in front of them going, hey, you have a show? I do this advocating thing for comics. And I'm sure Austin's like, what do you do, Austin? What do you tell them?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't care how long I've been doing this. I'm still thankful every time somebody wants me to come on and do a panel or a show or something like this. So I'm always coming at it. I'm grateful. If I find certain shows that I think are really neat, like, oh, I'd like to be a part of this, can I be on your show? You know what I mean? Because I think I could offer something. Now, I'm not going to jump on a show or something for the sake of just getting on a show. That defeats the purpose. But I have no problem asking still. I have no illusions on who I am or what I've done or what I'm doing. You know what I mean? You have to, as far as I'm concerned, you have to prove yourself every day. And what happened yesterday happens yesterday. That's history. And you always have to keep trying to prove yourself. And the only way to do that is to humble yourself, be thankful for what you have, and just walk about as being hungry and, hey, please, like to be on your show if that's possible. You know what I mean? Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Austin. And I want to point out something that Chuck said earlier, saying about the job. I firmly believe you have to treat a lot of what we do not only as a creator, but also as a host and or a guest, as a job.
Sure.
Because that imparts a certain amount of importance to what we're doing, I think. Because when we apply for a job, how do we get the job in the first place? We asked to get it. Right?
Yeah.
And that also implies certain things like, I've got to be there on time. I've got to behave in a certain way. And occasionally I may wind up doing things as creators, all of us. There are sometimes that the job we do as creators isn't as groovy as we would like it to be at times, but we do it anyway, whether it's promotion or what have you. There's always something you don't want to do, but the people who do it anyway and do it as best they can, those are the people who get ahead in this business and make the appearances on these shows. Austin, I believe you have a point.
Just to add to you, knowing your value is very important.
Yes.
But you have to understand what your value is. Some people think they have a lot more value than they really do. And a lot of people undervalue themselves. And that's also a problem. So having understanding of what your value is, what you can contribute, goes quite a long way to possibly getting into shows and doing, podcasts and all that sort of thing. Have confidence in what you're worth. You know what I mean? Don't try to oversell yourself, but don't undersell yourself too. That's why you need to understand where you fit. I think there was someone saying, Roland had said, not about talent, but by your experience and knowledge. That's where your value comes in. You know what I mean? And you can only be like Chuck has only done it for a few years, but he's hustled, he's grinded, he's put a lot of hours in. So his value is up high. So it's not about time itself. It's how much time you've put into what you're trying to do, who you are, how you've built yourself up. That's how you can understand value as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Meredith, do you agree with that or?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I actually wanted to add to that because as whether you're a moderator or a guest, it really speaks to your motivation. So again, for me, I tried to have a podcast a couple of years ago. I didn't have a good platform to bounce off of. So you can have the best thing, not have any marketing, not have any self-confidence to go out there and say, hey, I've got this great podcast. Nobody's going to know who the hell you are. So, it speaks to motivation. Are you hungry enough to say, hey, I'd like to be a guest. I have something to say. And you have that, the value. You give yourself value to say, I'm worth it to be on your show. And if I do a good job, if I do my homework and stuff, maybe I'll be invited back. Maybe somebody else will see me and go, hey, you had something good to say. I think you'd be good on my show. And it becomes this whole snowball effect. So it speaks to motivation also. You have to be hungry enough and stubborn enough to not give up and make yourself a better brand or have a better product.
Sure.
Did anyone else want to add on that? All right.
I just want to say thank you to Austin. That was a really sweet compliment. I appreciated that.
Dude, I'm just speaking truth. That's all. Got a lot of respect for you, sir.
Thank you, man.
And a few points on this, final points, and then I'm going to give it to everyone to give their last thoughts on being a good guest. But first off, I put out a personal, literal sheet of all the panels anyone is welcome to be on. Yes, I do look at who you are, and I make sure you'd fit. But for the most part, I've opened it up to all creators. So you got to be hungry. with that said, as much as you have to be hungry, you have to know where you fit. There are definitely shows you don't belong on. And I have said no to more than several shows because their topic wasn't going to be right, or I wouldn't fit in that particular environment because they wouldn't be there. Like inviting me on a show where you don't want me cursing while I'm promoting a fetish book. I don't think you understand what you're asking me to do if you're telling me I can't curse, because you're going to be really embarrassed when I bring up my fetish book. And I'm not rude about it. I'm like, hey, listen, just so you know, I'm right now promoting my fetish book. And I've had people be like, well, could you promote your kid's book? And I'll take the opportunity sometimes and say, yeah, I'll still promote my kid's book. Why not? I might not be on Kickstarter, but why not promote it while doing an interview? But understanding why you're on a show is paramount. Don't just say yes. Go, well, why? Why are you asking me on the show? What is there? As long as you understand why you're going in, you can run in with like a hot tag. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, to throw into that, Rob and I have been working with indie advocates for such a long time that Rob has been very generous and has basically said, dude, anytime you want to be on a show, just consider it and just jump on in. I'd love to have you. And he's always been very sweet to me that way. But he'll send me the lineup, and I could get on every episode if I really wanted to. But the thing is, especially now with so many people who have the time to come and educate us, I feel like I'm taking away from you guys, not only the fans, but the other panelists, by not giving them the opportunities. So when something like this came up, I was like, yes, I need to be on this show because I am on a lot of shows and I think I can talk intelligently about this. But if I feel like there's shows where, you know what, there's some other people who would do a much better job on that, I'll just walk away. So sometimes you do need to understand your value, and it's not about your exposure, but also about what you can do for the panel and the team that's working there. So sometimes the best thing you can do is be an audience member.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, totally.
And, just one final programming note for us. All these panels happen at 4 p.m. on purpose. That's to give you guys some sort of stability. We're the only people I know who are doing a panel every day at the same time. But that doesn't mean that we don't welcome topics. We are at the end of going on what'll be 40 panels soon. That's a lot of topics we've come and gone through. So if you guys have a specific topic you want us to jump into, or do a 201 and a 301, getting more advanced into it, we're open to those ideas as the audience, because we don't forget you're there. And I'll be honest, like Chuck says, I love Q&As. I miss not having the Q&A aspect. I don't want to be the one to steer the conversation. When I moderated a con, it's about you. So please join us. Please, as you notice, I go out of my way to get every comment on the show. We pull everywhere we can. And if you don't see a comment, please join YouTube. It's the easiest way to get the comments directly onto us. YouTube interacts the best with StreamYard. We're going to pass it off to every person. We're going to do the Jerry Springer final thoughts for everyone on the panel today. And we'll start off with the way that you guys came into the program today, starting with Brian K. Morris.
Thank you, Rob. If you're wondering how to increase your visibility, don't be afraid to ask to be on the show. But like has been said, know your value, know what you bring to the conversation, and don't just be seen to be seen. Make sure you have something to say, first of all. And most of all, have fun doing it, because this can be a lot of fun. There are some technical things you have to keep in mind, but it can be a good time, and you get to meet a whole lot of cool people. Like, look at all these people I got around me. Oh, yeah. Anyway, let's throw it to Austin now.
I don't see. Hey, there I am. Yeah, I agree exactly with what you're saying, Brian. Panels are supposed to be a lot of fun, and you need to be able to enjoy being on these shows. It's not supposed to be a burden or a waste of your time or anything like that. But if you are going to be on it, treat yourself professionally, act professionally, look professionally. Try to do it in a professional manner. Think of you being actually at a comic book show and how you would act or interact with people that are coming to your table. Same thing. The only difference is it's a camera and you're talking to different people via this electronic newfangled technology that's going to be seen forever and ever and ever. But the bottom line is enjoy talking with different people. Enjoy your different panelists. Hopefully you're adding something to the conversation and you're going to be inspiring or maybe a little bit of knowledge. But if you carry yourself a certain way and you talk a certain way, if you're worried about how you're going to be doing that, then just practice and, try to get on a little bit later. But if you haven't, do it. It's a lot of fun. And I wholeheartedly encourage anyone that's trying to do this sort of thing, whether you're trying to be a comic book person or whatever, whether you're low or high, get on this. This is the wave of the future. It's not going away, and it's only going to be expanding exponentially. So that's my 2 cents. Chuck, what do you think?
Yeah, that's good actually, and to expand upon that, make the best of your appearance. Every convention isn't always going to be the best and the biggest, and every panel or show isn't going to be the best and the biggest. I remember finding out on a show that I was on where really it was just some dude's YouTube, and he had only ever interviewed one person, and that was about 6 months ago. I was the second person he was interviewing, and then, months later, we still only had 3 views. And it didn't matter. I tried to be professional. I tried to have a good time with it. Of course, was it a waste of my time? Yeah, but if one of those 3 people decided to buy my book, then it wasn't a waste of my time. I got something happen from that. So you just got to make the best of it. You don't have to be a jerk. Just do a good job of that show and move on to the next one. And the next one is Meredith.
I was ready for that. So, as a panelist and a guest, the best advice that I could give is to be patient, be humble, stay attentive, and be a good listener. And if you're multitasking and you're distracted, whether you're at a bricks and mortar panel or whether you're at home and you've got the distractions behind you, take good notes so that you can refer back, and that way you're paying attention, because nobody wants to come in and go, what were we talking about? And I know that I did that earlier, but I was distracted and I took notes so that I could refer back. But that leads me to one last thing. And I think this might be a good idea for the next show, or a show idea would be to break the ice. For anybody who's never done a panel, who's ever gotten in front of the camera, that might be a good idea to just, hey, break the ice, get on here, say hi, pop that cherry. It's all good. Back to Rob.
Unmuted. There we go. Unmuted. I want to thank everyone who was on the show today. I don't know, Austin.
We lost somebody.
There's Austin. Hi, Austin. I want to thank everyone who was on the show today. And no one actually said where they could be followed. I noticed that. Not one of you caught where you'd be followed. So real quick, Brian K. Morris, where can they follow you?
Follow me on Facebook, also all the other social media, risingtide.pub and Rising Tide Publications on Facebook. Also, we do a daily show, never mind the furthermore, every day at 10 a.m. Eastern. Come find me there and join the conversation.
And we'll go Austin.
Me?
You're out of order, yeah.
We're out of order. Okay. Yeah. So, again, Austin Janowski on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and on YouTube. You can see, films I've worked on and auditionings and all that sort of thing. And if you just want to know a little bit more about me, just Google my name. You'll find some neat stuff about me. So, Mr. Chuck, there you go.
Damn. How's it going, guys? I'm Chuck Pino, freelance writer and editor. You can find me on Facebook, Chuck Pineau. You can find me on Twitter at Chucky Pin. You can find my crazy Chuck's Raw Reviews, where I talk about the best indie comics out there, at Chuck's Raw Reviews on YouTube. And if you happen to think that maybe I could possibly be a good writer, why don't you come check out my publications on Bonfire Press on Facebook. Meredith?
All right, I'm Meredith Lochran, and you can find me at Geek Insider. But you can also find me on Google if you do a search for Meredith Lochran, MEREJ99. That's me everywhere, like on Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. So, yeah, Geek Insider. Whoop!
Hi, it's me again, Rob. And I'm going to do something that I don't do enough and Chuck rides my ass about. I'm going to promote myself. I'm going to take a few minutes and actually talk about something that I'm very passionate about. and I'm going to pass it to someone that I know can do a great job with it. Yes, I'm going to stroke my ego. Rob, go ahead and take over for me and tell them about the amazing project.
An all-ages tale that teaches morals with farts and shows the power of imagination that will entertain everyone in your family, including the parents reading the book. Thank you for hitting play and allowing us to introduce you to Cat Dad and Supermom, the award-winning Farts with Morals storytelling awesome adventure that people seem to love. And we could keep going that way. We could use words that could try to get you to be excited and convinced to buy it, but I'd rather just be honest with you. I'd rather be humble with you and tell you why I created the story. You see that little boy over my shoulder, right over there, and the other side, the Supermom, and the big elephant that farts? All of that is based on my boy. He's a special needs 5-year-old who I love with all my heart. And he has made me a better man and has taught me what unconditional love is. So if this story is about him, the standard had to be higher. That's why I got one of the best artists in the world in Raheel Mohsin. I got Chuck Pino, who has done such great work as an editor and as a writer himself, to be part of this. Both of them became co-creators because of how much passion went into this. It was about passion for creating a top-notch story that was meant to entertain your entire family, and I think we did that. The rest, they're all keywords. They're all ways to convince you to do it. Truthfully, this is a story that matters to me, and it had to be one of the best stories that I wanted to share with you. It advocates for people who get bullied, and it advocates for the right things to do when you see someone get bullied. It advocates for being a better human being, but it also represents my son. And because of that standard, because of the fact that my son is in this book, it had to be one of the best things I could create, probably in my entire career. Anytime my son is attached to something, it is that high of a standard for me. So if you're looking for a reason to back this Kickstarter, it's because, well, because I love my son, and I wouldn't put anything out with his name on it that wasn't amazing. Thank you for watching, sharing, and backing Cat Dad and Supermom, and Ella Fart never forgets.
All right, everybody, that's it. We'll see you tomorrow, 4 p.m. for another great panel. Thank you to everyone who's been here today, watched, and participated.